Welcome to Literary Journeys with River. Today we dive into one of the most intense moments in the Flesh and Fire series, A Fire in the Flesh. This story pushes power, love, and destiny to their absolute limits. But remember, this is a summary, not the full book. If you enjoy this content, subscribe and turn on notifications. Also, comment where you're watching from. It really helps the channel grow. Get ready because nothing stays the same from this point forward. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Wolf, the Throne, and the Embers of Life. Sera awakens chained in Dalos, trapped by Kolis, the false king of the gods, while her body slowly fades. She believes she sees Nyktos in the form of a wolf, but doubts his presence. Ats and Callum argue over her imminent death and the possibility of extracting the embers she carries within. Suddenly, Ash appears, unleashing an astonishing display of power that shakes the palace and kills Hanan, the primogenial of the hunt. Kolis tries to maintain control, but Ash frees Sera from her chains. Though wounded and weak, she witnesses a titanic battle between Ash and Kolis, in which the true power of the primogenials is unleashed. Ash's fury is total, but Kolis, cunning, offers him a truce knowing that killing him would bring consequences. Tension rises as the Drakens draw near. Sera, almost without strength, knows that only she can stop what is about to erupt. Chapter 2. The Threat of the Embers and the Blood Pact. Ash and Kolis remain locked in furious combat. Sera, weakened and bleeding, struggles to move through the ruins while the two primogenials exchange accusations, revelations, and blows. Kolis accuses Ash of betrayal for attempting to take the embers of life and hiding their existence, while Ash calls him a murderer for killing his mother and father. Sera tries to intervene, aware that they could destroy each other. Driven by love, Ash launches his attack, but Kolis counters with blinding force. The fight rises into the skies, a brutal collision between shadow and light. Despite his betrayal, Ats helps Sera, revealing that if Ash dies, all balance will be broken. Understanding that only she can stop them, Sera fills with fury and activates the power of the embers. With a word laden with essence, she forces the primogenials to stop. But her next move will provoke a tragedy. Chapter 3. The Sacrifice of the Sirens for a Dying Goddess. Kolis's dagger reaches Ash's heart and Sera falls to the ground, defeated and wounded, while Ats tries to convince Kolis to save his life. Kolis halts his attack and takes unconscious Sera, holding her soul inside her body with his power. When she awakens, she finds herself on the beach of the Triton Islands, where Kolis asks Phanos, the primogenial of the seas, for help. He reluctantly agrees, knowing the price will be high. Between delirium and lucidity, Sera is submerged in the sea, where the Sirens surround her one by one, sharing their ether with her through an ancient and magical song. Each exhales life into her body, reviving the embers and stabilizing her essence. When she emerges again, Sera discovers that the Sirens have died to save her. Their sacrifice moves her to the core, and she understands that her destiny is irrevocably tied to the power she carries within. Chapter 4. The Failed Attempt to Assassinate Kolis. Sera awakens surrounded by the lifeless bodies of the Sirens, devastated to discover they sacrificed their lives to save her. Kolis, insensitive to her pain, insists he will not allow her to die, but his words sound like a threat. The tension between them escalates quickly when he tries to project the image of Sotoria onto her, obsessed with the past. Taking advantage of a lapse, Sera attacks with a stone umber sword and manages to wound him, but his power as a primogenial allows him to heal instantly. Sera tries to escape, but Kolis brutally subdues her, showing her his true form, a terrifying manifestation of the primogenial embers of death. Coercion dominates everything and forces her to obey his orders without being able to speak or move. The distorted love Kolis feels for Sotoria turns Sera into an object of obsession, and she understands that she has become his prisoner, defenseless before his power and madness. Chapter 5. Tears of Blood and a Cry Against Destiny. Alone in her new cage, Sera collapses as she realizes that Kolis can strip her of control with just 3 words. Still soaked and wounded, she remembers her time as Ios's favorite and understands that her destiny will be even darker. Terror overtakes her, but also rage. On the brink of a crisis that threatens to activate her embers, she struggles to control her breathing using Ash's teachings. Finally, she manages to calm herself and reasons that she cannot continue sacrificing everything for the greater good. She refuses to become an instrument, a weapon, or a shadow of what Sotoria was. She cries tears of blood, a symbol of her primogenial power, as she vows to herself not to follow the plan of seducing Kolis to kill him. She no longer wishes to fulfill a duty that demands she obliterate herself. For the first time, she chooses her freedom, her dignity, and her life, no matter the cost. Chapter 6. The Bloody Escape from the Golden Cage. Determined to escape, Sera finds a crystal hidden in a chest and turns it into an improvised weapon. When Callum enters to inspect, she pretends to be asleep and attacks him brutally, stabbing him until he is inert. She steals his key, leaves the cage and, as a safety measure, throws the key back under the bed. Then, she kills a guard with the stone Umbra sword, joking about the makeshift weapon. She ventures into the palace of Siwar, traversing empty rooms and corridors until she finds a group of chosen. Her appearance causes panic, and after being discovered, she flees in haste. As she advances, she witnesses an orgy among gods that confirms the decadence of the place. Blinded by the need to find Ash, she continues exploring, now knowing she is in the core of Kolis's madness. With each step, her determination grows. She must find him before it is too late and before her time runs out. Chapter 7. The Bloody Hallway and the Demon Attack. Sera ventures alone into the dark palace of Siwar, seeking a way out. Unease envelopes her as she hears strange sounds and comes across damp rooms, steeped in the smell of blood. In one of them, she finds a chosen being attacked by a woman who savagely bites him. Attempting to help, Sera is rammed by the woman, a creature with fangs and black eyes, driven by a ferocious hunger. She struggles to defeat her and manages to kill her with her sword, watching her body turn to dust. However, the chosen also dies, only to resurrect transformed into a monstrous being. Sera thus discovers that not only Andrea, but other chosen have been turned into demons. About to be attacked again, a Draken bursts in and knocks her unconscious. Sera sinks into darkness, dreaming of her lake and a wolf that protects her. In her mind, the echo of the horror she witnessed still resounds. Chapter 8. The Return of Kolis and the Inevitable Decision. Sera wakes again in her cage, confused, only to face Kolis, who appears cynical, manipulative, and increasingly obsessed with her supposed identity as Sotoria. Despite his seeming cordiality, Kolis keeps her prisoner and minimizes his violent acts. Sera begins to assume that there are only 2 possible paths: escape or kill Kolis. She reflects on her destiny, the responsibility of the greater good, and her love for Ash, deciding that she will do what is necessary to gain her freedom. Although everything in her rejects the idea of exploiting Kolis's feelings, she knows it is her only option to get close to him, win his trust, and find an opportunity. She discovers that her ascension could be delayed if she repeats the sacrifice that the Sirens made, but also that her time is limited. Upon reclaiming a hidden key, Sera reaffirms her purpose. No matter the cost, Ash must be free, and Kolis stopped. Chapter 9. The Threat of Callum and the Hawk's Message. Callum reappears, unharmed, confirming his impossible to kill nature. His sadism intensifies when he murders a chosen only to force Sera to obey. Faced with his threat to kill more innocents if she disobeys, Sera complies and bathes, overcoming the trauma of her past. Callum taunts her, insinuating he knows all her secrets and reveals that Kolis will have to choose between love or absolute power. The idea of a prolonged sacrifice persists, but Sera refuses to consider immoral methods. Her connection with the embers continues to grow, and she fears what that implies. Just as the weight of everything overwhelms her, a hawk bursts into the room. The creature transforms before her eyes into a man, the primogenial of war and concord. Sera is paralyzed by his sudden appearance, understanding that war is closer than ever, and that help may have finally arrived. Chapter 10. Atz's Oath and Sotoria's Trapped Soul. Sera confronts Atz with fury, demanding explanations for his betrayal. He defends himself, claiming that capturing her prevented the destruction of the Umbral lands, and reveals that he knew of her existence long before Nyktos. Atz confesses that he was the hawk who watched her in the dying forest and reveals secrets about the Choras and the ancient traditions lost with the fall of Nyktos. Gradually, Sera learns that within her also resides the soul of Sotoria, but not as her true rebirth. That revelation changes the meaning of her destiny. If she dies, Sotoria's soul will be trapped forever. Despite her mistrust, Sera forces Atz to swear loyalty and demands that he support Nyktos. The embers within her react to the oath, and the bond is sealed. Before departing, Atz promises to seek an ancient bone weapon, knowing that the time may come to use it against Kolis. Chapter 11. The Weight of Destiny and Sera's Choice. Sera is devastated after discovering that she is not the weapon created by Nyktos to destroy Kolis. Atz maintains that, not being the true rebirth of Sotoria, she might not be able to kill him, shaking everything she believed about her purpose. But Sera refuses to accept that her existence and sacrifices have been in vain. Despite the emotional blow, she reaffirms her decision to free Nyktos and to use her position as Kolis's weakness to gain an advantage. Atz admits that Kolis is weaker than they believed, for the Umbra stone managed to wound him. The conversation intensifies when Sera demands that Atz support Nyktos in all his decisions. He kneels and swears loyalty to her, recognizing her as the true primogenial of life. Finally, Sera requests a weapon forged from the bones of the ancients. Atz agrees, aware of the risk, and promises to help her in whatever way he can. Chapter 12. The Shared Dream and the Connection Beyond the Body. In a vivid dream, Sera reunites with Ash at the lake beneath the Elysium Peaks. Both are naked, and the moment is charged with a mixture of tenderness, desire, and anguish. At first, she thinks it is only an illusion, but it soon becomes clear that they are sharing the same spiritual space. Ash, confused by its apparent realism, touches her and adores her with reverence, and the encounter becomes deeply intimate. Both express their love in body and soul, and Sera, in tears, begs him to live beyond his death. However, when Ash notices the real wounds on her face, he begins to suspect something is amiss. His body begins to fade, and Sera begs not to wake. The dreamlike environment disintegrates, and Ash disappears into shadows, leaving Sera shattered and alone in her cage, still feeling the physical echo of what they shared. The connection between them was real and painfully fleeting. Chapter 13. Kolis's Manipulation and the Golden Cage Trap. Callum watches over Sera while she conceals Atz's visit. When she mentions having seen a chosen feeding on another, Kolis appears and reveals that they are demons, failed products of the ascension. Then he enters the cage, interrogates her about Nyktos, and shows himself jealous and obsessive. Sera activates her courtesan training, feigning submission and shaping her words to avoid provoking his rage. Kolis offers her a drink while insisting that Nyktos is in stasis, imprisoned and defenseless. The conversation becomes more intimate and twisted. He tries to confirm her feelings toward his nephew and discovers the marriage mark on her hand. Sera lies and claims not to be in love, only feeling affection. She emotionally manipulates Kolis into considering freeing Nyktos, convincing him that love is demonstrated by pleasing the other. Kolis accepts the deal, but warns her that if she lies, her soul will also belong to him for all eternity. Chapter 14. The Truth About the Umbra Stone and the Fear of Becoming a Monster. Sera discovers that Nyktos is in stasis and protected by the earth, but that the Umbra Stone on the ground prevented energy from saving him before. Kolis explains that this stone forms from remains charred by dragon fire and can block the power of the ether, weakening even the primogenials. Sera is surprised to learn that her embers managed to pierce it. Kolis, increasingly invasive, says he believes her story about Nyktos and his cardia, and claims to know him better than he does himself. He asserts that Ash fears becoming like him because he knows he could commit atrocities for love. Seeing that Sera is disturbed, he demands that she control her essence. She manages it, but he reveals that he does not believe in her supposed lack of feelings. By showing her the marriage mark, Kolis concludes that she is in love. Sera, desperate, insists that she is not. Kolis, offended but intrigued, demands a choice: her loyalty in exchange for Ash's freedom. Chapter 15. Displayed before the gods and Kolis's brutal punishment. Sera is groomed and dressed to be displayed as a favorite before the gods of Kolis's temple. Callum remains present, demonstrating his special status as the first returned. Despite the treatment, Sera remains trapped in a golden cage, watched by attendees as an object of desire. When a god named Uroz makes obscene comments about her body, incited by Kolis himself, he destroys him mercilessly, reducing him to pulp before all. The execution, quick and brutal, makes it clear that Sera is being used as a show of power and a symbol of possession. Later, a goddess named Demetria approaches her and confirms the rumors. She knows that Sera is the consort of the Umbral lands and that she was present at her coronation. Hope ignites in Sera upon learning that her identity has spread farther than she believed, but she also understands that she must continue pretending, watching every word and movement to save Ash and herself. Chapter 16. The Deal with Kyn and Rain's Return. Sera faces another public session in Kolis's court, where the primogenial Kyn arrives with alarming news about the forces in the Lands of Bones and a request to conquer the Umbral lands. Although Kolis rejects a direct attack, Kyn offers him a gift: Rain, captured and brutally beaten. The god's appearance moves Sera, who tries to save him by negotiating with Kolis. When Kyn implies his desire to take Sera if she is not Sotoria, she understands the danger she will face if her true identity is revealed. Seeing that Rain will be executed, Sera intervenes with a desperate act. She offers to do whatever it takes to save him. Kolis accepts the deal. Rain is freed and sent back to the Umbral lands. Alone with Kolis, he demands that she share his bed. Sera obeys, remaining hollow inside, turned into a blank canvas to survive one more day in the cage of the false king. Chapter 17. Ios's necklace and the threat of uncovering the truth. After a tense night sharing a bed with Kolis, Sera discovers that he has left Ios's necklace on her pillow, the same one Rain had hidden. Although nothing physical occurred, the emotional trauma still affects her. Callum insinuates that Sera prostituted herself for her deal with Kolis, sparking an outburst of anger and a dangerous display of ember power. Amid this tension, Sera discovers that she is not in the palace of Siowar, but in the city of the gods in a building called Vita. The revelation further complicates her possible escape. The arrival of Kolis alongside a goddess named Ione foreshadows a greater threat. Ione has the ability to read thoughts and memories. Trapped with no possible escape, Sera feels her facade is about to fall. The presence of this new figure completely shifts the balance of the deadly game she is caught in. Chapter 18. Ione's Lie and the Rebirth of Sotoria. Cornered, Sera tries to resist the goddess Ione, who is capable of reading her thoughts. However, Kolis uses coercion to force her submission. The pain is unbearable when Ione feeds on her blood and explores her mind. Just when Sera believes all is lost, Ione, against all logic, lies. She declares that Sera is Sotoria and that she has never truly loved. Kolis is completely convinced. Left alone, he declares Sera's coronation invalid to delegitimize any official bond with Nyktos. Callum, witnessing the scene, also appears fearful at this new certainty. Ione's lie changes the course of the game, but Sera knows she has only bought time. Kolis, now believing she is his reborn Greeka, becomes more possessive than ever. The pressure rises to a critical point when he, burning with desire, bites her neck, marking yet another step toward a forced union and an ever darker future. Chapter 19. Kolis's Mark and the Void of the Soul. Kolis loses control and bites Sera on the neck as he feeds from her, causing devastating pain that becomes a repulsive mixture of pleasure and humiliation. Unable to fight for fear of endangering Ash, Sera mentally retreats into memories with him, blocking out what is happening. When Kolis finishes, he appears ashamed and asks for forgiveness, promising it will not happen again. Sera isolates herself in an icy bath, feeling empty, disconnected, and certain that although she had prepared to use her body as a tool, she never imagined having no choice. She reflects on the absence of real options and the impossibility of justifying what she has endured. Between rage, guilt, and despair, she understands that the sacrifice for Ash has cost her a part of herself. Still, her determination remains intact. She will survive to free him, no matter how broken she feels inside. Chapter 20. Atz's Confession and Kolis's Lurking Threat. Atz visits Sera in the form of a hawk and reveals that Ash has begun to awaken from his stasis, although weakened by a weapon made of ancient bones. Sera feels relieved, but fears for Ash's condition and for Kolis's instability. Atz explains that primogenials must enter stasis to prevent their essences from corrupting them, as has happened to KYN. Despite the relief of having someone trustworthy nearby, Sera hides Kolis's bite. Callum, watching her, confronts her with disdain, suspects her true intentions, and hurls cruel insults. Sera responds with fury and summons a storm using her embers, making it clear that her power is growing. Just then, Kolis enters and amid the tension, reveals that Callum is not only a returned, but also Sotoria's brother. The revelation shakes Sera completely and transforms the dynamic among all present. Chapter 21. Callum's Story and Death's Silent Threat. Sera is stunned to learn that Callum was Sotoria's brother and that he committed suicide after her death. Kolis, with a mix of pride and sorrow, recounts that he held him as he died and brought him back as a returned, defying divine law. Callum's emotional burden is real, though his character remains arrogant. Kolis attempts to renew the bond with Sera, apologizing again for his behavior and stating that Ash will be freed. However, he also admits to having incapacitated him, which fills Sera with anger and fear. Then, Kolis loses control and shows his true form, a corpse animated by embers of life. The horror of his appearance reflects his internal corruption. After promising her time, Kolis warns her never to use essence again. The threat is clear and Sera, firm inside, vows vengeance. Kolis is not just the enemy. He is the living embodiment of death, and he must fall. Chapter 22. Guilt, Dreams, and Ashes Awakening. Locked away and consumed by guilt, Sera tries to calm her restless mind, tormented by memories of her past and the decisions that brought her to the golden cage. She thinks of Ash, Rain, Ios, Bele, Ezra, and so many others, wishing she had done something different to prevent so much pain. The shame of what Kolis did to her overwhelms her, and between vomiting and tears, she fights the sensation of having failed everyone, including Sotoria. Exhausted, she falls into a vivid dream where she appears beside the lake, and Ash answers her call. There, he speaks to her of chains, voices, and memories, making it clear that what they share is not just a dream. He asks her to tell Kolis that only he can ascend her, to invoke the Nyktos when they free him. Upon waking, Kolis confronts her and perceives ashes sent on her. Sera feigns ignorance, but the embers and the connection between them are more real than she wants to admit. Chapter 23. The Primogenial's Hearing and the Painful Lie. Sera is finally taken out of her cage and led by Kolis to the outside, where she discovers the scale of the sanctuary and the deterioration that reveals recent violence. Upon entering a great council hall, she witnesses an audience filled with primogenials, gods, and drakons. Kolis seats her at his feet, displaying her as a trophy. Kiela, the goddess of rebirth, confronts her publicly by calling her Nyktos' consort. But Kolis discredits her coronation with the help of Kyn, who lies, claiming that Nyktos never received his blessing to take her as consort. Pressured by the deal with Kolis to save Ash, Sera states that she is there by her own choice. Although she knows it is a half-truth, saying it out loud tears her apart. Kiela appears unconvinced. Sera feels everyone's inquisitive gaze and sinks into helplessness, knowing that each word she utters is another chain binding her to the will of the false Primal of Death. Chapter 24. The Dagger, the Servant, and Seraphena's Trial of Fire. The audience continues while Kolis coldly displays the apparent freedom of the chosen. Sera witnesses how a servant is used by a god and questions Kolis about consent. He challenges her to act, handing her a dagger and pointing to another servant trapped by a god named Evander, known for enjoying pain. Although Sera suspects his motives, she takes the dagger and heads toward the scene. Her own pain, the memory of what she has suffered, and the image of Jacinta, a terrified young woman, intertwine until doubt fades. With cold determination, Sera plunges the Umbra stone blade through the god's heart. Her act of justice explodes the hall into screams and chaos. She is no longer just a consort or a prisoner. She has just marked a breaking point. The fury and power within her cannot be contained much longer. The true struggle has begun. Chapter 25. The Manipulated Execution and Seraphena's Unleashed Fury. Seraphena kills Evander after believing, by Kolis' insinuation, that he abused Jacinta. However, the young woman's heartbreaking reaction reveals that she loved him, and Kolis makes it clear that he never claimed it was forced, but that she assumed what she wanted. Nibirius, the Drakon, challenges the guards and sniffs Sera, but does not attack her. Confused and betrayed, Sera understands that everything was a strategy to punish Kiela through her. With an ancient fury awakening inside her, she feels for the first time that the embers and the voice that cries for vengeance are not those of another being, but her own. When she lunges toward Kolis, Elias stops her, snatching the dagger away. In shock, Sera watches as Kolis presides over trivial and cruel trials, executing a god for a trivial complaint. Forced to sit on his lap, humiliated publicly, Sera understands that her punishment is not yet over, and Kolis has still not shown all his power. Chapter 26. Vises humiliated, Kolis pleased, and dignity in ruins. Vises reappears before the court, wearing a red jade crown and with her haughtiness intact, though soon exposed by Seraphena as a liar. Kolis, condescending and cruel, forces her to apologize publicly and punishes her for having failed him. In an act of deliberate humiliation, he hands her over to Kyn as entertainment, and Vises, although trying to resist, ends up accepting her fate. Sera, unable to tolerate it, confronts Kolis before everyone and begs him to stop the punishment. Although she succeeds, the damage is already done. Kolis, enraged, takes her to his chambers and accuses her of disobedience, arrogance, and ingratitude. She, trapped by coercion, cannot defend herself. The embers vibrate violently within her, a reflection of her contained rage. Kolis declares that her punishment is a display of love, and amid tears of blood, activates magical chains that suspend Sera's body in a painful position. The false king decrees that, after this, they may need to take additional measures. Chapter 27. The truth about Sotoria and the never-ending punishment. Hanging by chains, Seraphena struggles not to scream while Callum tries to start a conversation. He admits that what happened with Vises was wrong and that Kolis has changed since Nyktos' death, revealing that before he had no favorites nor punishments like the current ones. By insinuating that Sera is not Sotoria, and that's why Kolis punishes her, Sera provokes him by reminding him that he shared with his mother the secret to kill a primogenial. Callum also confesses that it was Nyktos who killed Sotoria, not Kolis, which plants doubts in Sera's mind. Hours later, Kolis returns smelling of smoke, unties her and embraces her crying, insisting that he loves her. He takes her to bathe without looking at her, and informs her that he interrupted Vises' punishment. In the water, Sera bursts into a desperate laugh, understanding that nothing has changed. Kolis continues exercising his power under a mask of love, and she remains imprisoned by a cage more emotional than physical. Chapter 28. Kolis' manipulation and the forced ascension. After the recent pain and humiliation, Sera decides to feign submission to Kolis with the aim of gaining his trust and securing Ash's liberation. She feigns remorse and obedience, and succeeds in awakening Kolis' twisted tenderness. He takes her to a chamber where she witnesses an ascension ritual with a chosen named Jove. Kolis, to demonstrate his capacity to create life, feeds on the young man without causing him pain, and then Elias transfers divine blood to him. Despite the almost pleasurable appearance of the act, Sera is struck by the manipulation and abuse implicit in the process. She reflects on the morality of what she witnesses and on her own involvement, feeling guilty for having asked that no pain be inflicted, which makes the act even more disturbing. Kolis then explains how the ascended function, revealing their dependence on blood and the risk of becoming demons if they give in to their hunger. Chapter 29. The discovery of the star and Sera's game. Sera assimilates that she cannot kill Kolis without destroying the balance of the worlds, for he is the sole bearer of the embers of death. This leaves her devastated and full of doubts. She reflects on the training she received to kill him and on the secrets that the Nyktos and Nyktos have hidden. The unexpected visit of Vises, who forces her entry, unleashes a tense conversation where both confront each other with insults, threats, and reproaches. Vises insinuates that Sera is not truly Sotoria, and threatens to reveal her love for Ash to Kolis. In the end, Vises admits that if Kolis cannot be hers, she would rather see him alone. Sera, for her part, warns her that she will do everything in her power to see her burn before she dies. That night, Kolis again sleeps beside Sera, and although he promises not to touch her, he humiliates her with comments about her past and her faithfulness. Sera feigns compliance, knowing that the only way to protect Ash is to continue the facade. Chapter 30. The Desperate Plan and the Finding of the Star. Sera's ascension draws near. She bleeds from the gums, has fatigue and headaches. She knows that if she dies, Kolis will attempt to extract the embers to turn her into an ascended. She reflects on the possibility of using the diamond, the star, created by the Eri to contain embers, as a last hope. While out walking with Kolis, she manipulates him with flattery and insinuations to make him show her a unique jewel. She mentions the childhood desire to own a silver diamond and makes him believe it is merely a sentimental whim. The plan works. Kolis takes her to his throne hall and, upon pronouncing words in the primogenial tongue, makes a diamond hidden in the ceiling of the cage descend. The cluster of diamonds was actually the star, the legendary object that Sera has been seeking without knowing it was above her head all along. This discovery renews her hope, although she knows she is in a race against time, against her own ascension and Kolis's growing manipulation. Chapter 31. The Vision of the Star and Nyktos' Secret Revealed. Sera holds the star and a wave of energy runs through her body. Upon contact, the diamond shows her visions of the past. A man covered in tattoos, a fire dragon, and the creation of the stone. Then she sees Nyktos and Kolis confront each other, both marked by pain and a shared history. She discovers that Kolis killed her brother with a bone fragment while Nyktos offered him forgiveness. Overwhelmed with emotion, Sera mentions that Kolis cried, which enrages him. He attacks her, but the embers of life awaken and Sera throws him against the bars, destroying the cage. Filled with fury, she confronts him with renewed power, commands the ether and turns her will into physical force. After a brutal fight, Sera stabs him repeatedly with bone fragments. Exhausted and trembling, she falls to the ground just as Ash bursts in and finds her. He embraces her and promises her that everything will be all right. Chapter 32. The Escape from Dalos and the Revelation of Death in the Blood. Ash rescues Sera from the sanctuary, finding her wounded and exhausted. Although he wants to kill Kolis, she stops him. Eliminating him would break the balance of the worlds. Elias appears, but instead of attacking, swears loyalty to Sera as primogenial of life. Nyktos arrives, sweeping away the guards with fire, and Nyktos joins the group. Sera reveals that the star, hidden in the ceiling, contains not only Sotoria's soul, but also Nyktos'. Although everyone wants to escape, Nyktos urges that Sotoria's soul be extracted as soon as possible. Ash opposes for fear of accelerating Sera's ascension, but she already knows that her body is changing. The embers flood everything. They must decide whether to hide Kolis's body or destroy it, for the bone will soon be expelled and awaken. Amid tensions, promises, and urgent decisions, Sera takes control. They must not only save her, but protect the souls trapped inside the legendary diamond. Chapter 33. The Connection Between Souls and the Hidden Power in the Star. Sera takes the star and confirms that it contains Nyktos' soul. Despite Ash's concern, she uses her embers to summon the diamond and feels it vibrate with energy and memory. Ash tries to stop her, but her determination prevails. The connection between them intensifies when he guides her to calm her breathing after an anxiety attack. In a moment of deep intimacy, Sera asks Ash to touch her, desiring to reconnect with herself and with him. What begins with tenderness transforms into a shared bath, where Ash tends to every part of her body with delicacy. In that private space, without violence or shadows, they feel free again. She cleans her physical and emotional wounds, while Ash holds her with respect and devotion. passion grows, but it is the trust that weighs most. They know time is limited, but in that instant only what they share in body and soul matters. Chapter 34. The Secret Refuge, Kiela's Plans, and the Countdown. In a hidden spring in the mortal world, Sera and Ash find a moment of peace while reflecting on death, Sotoria's soul, and Sera's inevitable destiny. They talk about the shared dreams and confirm that they were not illusions, but real bonds, made possible by the embers, the blood shared, and the connection between their souls. Ash, full of tenderness and guilt, promises to protect her and take her back to the refuge one day, although both know that moment may never come. While she prepares to face destiny, he obtains clothes to cover her, burning the dress that symbolized her captivity. Amid the calm, Sera reveals that she is dying. The embers of life have invaded her body completely, blood flows from her mouth, and she barely feels her own life force. She knows they must free the embers soon, even if that means accelerating her death. Time is running out. Chapter 35. Nyktos' Soul Freed and Sotoria's Dilemma. Ash and Sera arrive in the lands of bones, where the earth blossoms over the millenary remains of fallen gods. There, among forgotten temples and buried history, they reunite with Bele, Sayan, Rahar, Kiela, and other allies. Sera discovers that Orphine has died, and she is emotionally exhausted, though she hides her suffering. The star vibrates within her as Nyktos' soul is released in a luminous sphere that caresses Ash's face before ascending. The act causes Sera to faint, which worries everyone. Upon waking, she is weak but conscious of her decision. She must also free Sotoria's soul. Kiela warns that the cosmic balance may be altered, but the group decides to take the risk. Sera and Ash, connected in soul and body, perform the process, managing to contain Sotoria's soul in the diamond. They know there will be war, but this time, they are prepared to face it together. Chapter 36. Farewell to Sotoria and Hope Before the War. Sera awakens in Ash's arms on the plains of Thaya, confused but alive. Nyktos' soul has departed, and she continues battling the advance of her ascension. Ash has shared his blood to save her, something that generates a tense debate between them. The arrival of Nyktos reinforces the urgency of extracting Sotoria's soul before it's too late. Kiela and Ats propose a ritual, knowing that the Hados may intervene for breaking the balance of life and death. Sera accepts the risk and, with the help of Ash and Kiela, manages to separate her soul from Sotoria's. In the process, she feels an intimate farewell, the certainty that they will meet again. Sotoria is sealed in the star, to be guarded until her rebirth. Although weakened, Sera feels peace. Her soul is now only her own. War approaches, but now there is a clear purpose: to resist. Chapter 37. The Farewell of Allies and the Honor Granted to Sera. Back in the lands of bones, Seraphena reflects on what has been lived and what is to come. She remembers her conversation with Ats, the sadness in his face, and how all paths lead to the sacrifice she must make soon. She knows her time is limited, but tries to find solace in the presence of those who, at another time, could have been her friends. Elias, Rain, and other gods show her respect, and Sera hands over Ios's necklace, a symbol of her journey. A deep conversation with Rain reveals how much they value her, especially for what she has sacrificed. Then Ash arrives and, without grand words, the other warriors, gods, and Drakens honor her with a solemn and powerful gesture. They kneel, offer their blood, and recite an oath of eternal respect. Through those words, Sera feels, for the first time, fully seen and recognized as a warrior worthy of honor. Chapter 38. The Last Moment of Intimacy by the Lake. Sera and Ash travel to the hidden lake among the dark elms, an intimate place that represents the beginning of their connection. She desires to be with her husband one last time, not just to share passion, but to savor what it means to be loved. Despite the pain, anguish, and the inevitable death drawing near, they allow themselves a moment of total surrender. Between caresses, desire, and tenderness, Sera finds the peace she had sought for so long. Ash, with all his power contained, gives her what she desires. Not simply pleasure, but the sensation of being seen, desired, and respected. There are no words that can match the depth of what they share, and both cling to the present, to the now, aware that there will be no after. For Sera, this moment is not just passion. It is the affirmation of her existence, her choice, and the love that defies the limits of time and death. Chapter 39. Ash's Choice and Death's Roar. The trembling of the worlds marks Kolis's awakening. Time runs out. Sera, aware that her end has come, begs Ash to live and accept his destiny as king. But Ash, devastated, rejects that future without her. In a desperate and fiercely loving act, he decides not to extract Sera's embers, but to try to ascend her with his blood. He bites her and holds her in the lake as life drains from her body. He begs her not to die, willing to destroy the worlds if he loses her. Sera, feeling her own death, revisits memories of her childhood, her bonds, moments with her mother, Odetta, Ezra, and Holland. Amid the darkness, she hears Ash break down, finally confessing that he is in love with her. And then, at the threshold of death, with his blood in her veins and her name on his lips, Sera sinks into darkness, and everything goes dark. Chapter 40. The Rebirth of Life in the Heart of the Stars. Sera floats in a dark limbo, dissolved into nothingness, until a familiar voice calls to her, Odetta. That spark awakens ancestral memories. She observes the origin of the worlds, the fall of the stars, the rise of the ancients and primogenials, and the creation of life. She feels the ether flowing through her and understands that she is not just part of the cycle, but the cycle itself. Through visions of destruction and rebirth, she accepts her place as life, the principle of everything. The essence awakens within her body, her embers blaze, her heart beats again. She returns to consciousness in Ash's arms, submerged in the lake, while an explosion of power erupts from within her and shakes the worlds. She becomes a vessel of light, the living manifestation of life itself, surrounded by the ether that now belongs to her by right, that is herself and everything she represents. Chapter 41. Ash's Confessions and the Awakening of the Soulmate. While Sera sleeps, she floats in an oniric lake, watched by a silver wolf, Ash. His voice envelopes her dreams and confesses truths he had kept silent. He speaks of the first time he saw her as a child, and how her presence marked him even before he knew who she was. He remembers their first kiss, their arguments, the inevitable attraction, and the nascent love he suppressed for so long. He confesses his fear of losing her, his rage when she tried to kill him, and how even so he never stopped loving her. Sera listens to every word, every phantom caress that awakens in her body memories of desire, power, and surrender. Ash speaks of his father's love for his mother, of the sadness and pain he endured, and how Sera changed everything. In that dreamlike state, she begins to remember who she is, who she was, and who she will be, as she understands that life, even in its darkness, is always worth living. Chapter 42. Immortal Hunger, Embodied Desire, and Consummated Love. Sera awakens. She does so slowly, with a wild hunger and an ether vibrating through her body. She recognizes Ash by his scent, his voice, and his essence. He is with her, offering himself completely, his blood, his body, his soul. She bites him and drinks from him, savoring his essence as desire grows and becomes need. Mounted on his lap, she feeds on his neck while riding him with increasing intensity. The union of their bodies is wild and sacred, driven by hunger and love. Ash, with sweetness and surrender, reminds her who she is, but he doesn't need to. She already knows. She knows that he is her other half, her love, her soulmate. With every moan, every caress, every thrust, Sera is reborn not only as life, but as a woman in love and powerful. Pleasure consumes them and full consciousness returns. In the end, she looks at him and says what he so needed to hear. She will always know who he is. Chapter 43. Ash's primogenial form and Sera's absolute surrender. Sera watches in amazement as Ash loses control and transforms into his primogenial form, wrapped in shadows, wings, and overflowing power. Although she tries to warn him to flee, she refuses. She desires him whole without masks, as what he truly is. Bound by tendrils of ether and wrapped in his energy, Sera surrenders with passion and intensity to Ash, while he adores her with his power, his mouth, and every part of his body. The experience is wild, profound, and completely different. The sensations envelop her entirely, from within to her skin, merging pleasure and connection. Ash promises her love, protection, and eternal surrender as he joins with her again and again with devotion and strength. For Sera, there is no doubt, he is her soulmate. In a world marked by pain, what they share is so intense it redefines her existence. They are no longer two, but one essence. Chapter 44. The Confession of Love and the Rebirth of the Queen of the Gods. After the physical surrender, Ash finally speaks the words Sera longed for. I love you. Moved to tears, she understands that their love does not depend on the cardia. They speak of the early moments when their bond arose, from the lake to their confrontations. Ash reveals that he dreamed of her death and that fear led him to have his cardia removed, believing that this could prevent destiny. But love blossomed even without a heart, because they share one soul. Sera understands that they are soulmates, bound by a bond that not even death can break. Between laughter, desire, and tenderness, she names him king, realizing that her ascension as primogenial of life has transformed her into the queen of the gods. As they reflect on the past, they also feel the weight of the future. The connection between them, emotional and physical, has transcended every limit. They are the balance between death and life. They are everything. Chapter 45. The Queen of Life and the Miracle of the Reborn World. Sera awakens as the true primogenial of life, with her memories intact, her power restored, and an unbreakable bond with Ash. After days of intimacy and confessions, he reveals that he had his cardia removed to avoid a destiny he had dreamed of, the end of the worlds caused by his pain if she died. However, by falling in love with her even without a heart, Ash demonstrates that theirs is a connection of souls. Sera understands that they are twin hearts, a rare and sacred union. Together they discover that the rot has begun to recede. Upon stepping onto the balcony, Sera sees that the barren land blossoms again and the sky shines with soft hues, like a perpetual dawn. Grass sprouts where once everything was dead. Ash confirms the unthinkable. She has saved Elysium and the mortal world. Sera, still amazed, accepts the magnitude of what has been achieved. She is no longer just their queen. She is rebirth itself. She is life. Chapter 46. The Box of Ribbons, Eternal Promises, and the True Union of Souls. Alone in bed, Sera contemplates the stillness Ash left behind after going to speak with Rain. Her heart still beats with emotion for having stopped the rot, knowing that, although Kolis remains a threat, he has kept a promise. She discovers a small wooden box with silver hinges that contains all of her hair ribbons, gathered by Ash since their story began. The detail moves her deeply, understanding that Ash loved her long before they both accepted it. Upon returning, Ash promises her that, as her husband, he will always love and protect her, no matter the past. They speak about unconditional trust, about what it means to be spouses, and how their bond transcends any force. Ash calls her his first and his last. Through his words and caresses, Sera understands that they are twin hearts, a union that escapes the control of the Nyktos. Finally, they do not say anything more. They simply love each other. And that's the end of A Fire in the Flesh, a story where sacrifice, love, and power reshape the fate of gods and mortals. Thanks for staying until the end. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Now tell me in the comments, do you think Sera made the right choice by embracing her destiny as life itself?